The Elizabethan, presented by Kristen Joy Ave from BSED English 3A. Queen Elizabeth I was Queen of England and Ireland from 17 November 1558 until her death in 1603. Considered to be England's golden age, ruled for 44 years, never married, huge deal at the time, nicknamed the Virgin Queen, Elizabeth was the last of the 5 monarchs of the House of Tudor. The Elizabethan era is the period of English history associated with the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. The Elizabethan era took place from 1558 to 1603 and is considered by many historians to be the golden age in English history. During this era, England experienced peace and prosperity, while the arts flourished. The time period is named after Queen Elizabeth I, who ruled England during this time. This was also the time during which Elizabethan theatre flourished, and William Shakespeare and many other composed plays that broke free of England's past style of plays and theatre. It was an age of exploration and expansion abroad, while back at home, the Protestant Reformation became more acceptable to the people, most certainly after the Spanish Armada was repulsed. It was also the end of the period when England was a separate realm before its royal union with Scotland. William Shakespeare emerged from this period as a poet and playwright never seen before. Other important playwrights of the era of Elizabeth include Christopher Marlowe, William Shakespeare, Edmund Spenser, and Francis Beaumont. Sir Philip Sidney (1554 to 1586) was an English poet who is also remembered as one of the most prominent figures of the Elizabethan age. It was at this time that the city comedy genre developed. Theater and poetry were the dominant forms of literature during this period. Drama was at its heyday during the Elizabethan era, and English people developed a sense of appreciation to plays performance, and very quickly that the habit of attending theater halls rooted in the English culture. The Elizabethan age saw the flowering of poetry, the sonnet, the Spenserian stanza, dramatic blank verse was a golden age of drama, especially for the plays of Shakespeare, and inspired a wide variety of splendid prose, from historical chronicles, versions of the Holy Scriptures, pamphlets, and literary criticism to the first English novels. Poetry and sonnets became a popular form of writing with Shakespeare and Spenser's extraordinary works. The style of writing sonnets and 3 quatrains and a couplet later become known as Shakespearean. Spenserian stanza describes a 9-line stanza based on Spenser's work, most notably the epic The Faerie Queene. One of the most excellent pieces of Elizabethan literary criticism is An Apology for Poetry. It is Sidney's eloquent response to a minor writer's attack on poetry. Edmund Spenser, born in 1552 in London, England, died January 13, 1599 in London. He was an English poet whose long allegorical poem, The Faerie Queene, is one of the greatest in the English language. It was written in what came to be called the Spenserian stanza. It's Spenser's idealism, his love of beauty, and his exquisite melody which have caused him to be known as the poet's poet. Edmund Spenser was a man of his times, and his work reflects the religious and humanistic ideals as well as the intense but critical patriotism of Elizabethan England. His contributions to English literature in the form of a heightened and enlarged poetic vocabulary, a charming and flexible verse style, and a rich fusing of the philosophic and literary currents of the English. Him to rank not far removed from that of William Shakespeare and John Milton. Famous works of Edmund Spenser are the following. First, The Shepherd's Calendar in 1579 can be called the first work of the English literary renaissance, in which various characters in the guise of innocent and simple shepherds converse about life and love in a variety of elegantly managed verse forms, formulating weighty, often satirical opinions on questions of the day. The paradoxical combination in pastoral poetry of the simple, isolated life of shepherds with the sophisticated social ambitions of the figures symbolized or discussed by these shepherds has been of some interest in literary criticism. Second, a view of the present state of Ireland, written in 1595 to 1596. It was published in the year 1633. A later tract argues lucidly for a typically 16th century theory of rule, firm measures ruthlessly applied with gentleness only for completely submissive subject populations. Third, The Faerie Queene consists of 6 books and a fragment known as the Mutability Cantus. According to Spenser's introductory letter in the first edition in year 1590 of his great poem, it was to contain 12 books, each telling the adventure of one of Gloriana's knights. The history of this episode is charmingly evoked in Colin Clout's Come Home Again, completed in year 1595, which is also one of Spenser's most effective pastoral embodiments of a provincial innocent up against the sophistication of a central power, with subsequent reflections on false, superficial love and the true love that finally animates a concordant universe. And the fourth one is Complaints, published in year 1591, suggests by its miscellaneous and uneven character that Spenser was hastily bringing to the light of day nearly every last shred that he had to offer. Early translations, an elegy, and the delightful mock-heroic poem, Moi Potmus, are contained in it. And lastly, the Amarete and the Epithalamion, published in 1595, a sonnet sequence and a marriage ode celebrating his marriage to Elizabeth Boyle after what appears to have been an impassioned courtship in 1594. That's all for the Elizabethan era as well as to the Edmund Spenser writings. I hope that you learned something from it. Thank you and God bless everyone.